Welcome on this Ides of March 2013. It's been a while, probably many months since I've posted a video. I've tried to write, I've had writer's block, but let's not go into that here. Today I'm going to harken back to 8 years ago on the Ides of March 2005 when three wise kids showed up at our door and we told them, beware the Ides of March, remember the D word, disintermediation, which at the time we were discussing the notion that we had of sort of a reverse IPO where the people of Earth created a leverage buyout of the entire planet, created a giant monopoly of us, of the entire Earth, of all people, of all nations, an enterprise that had its own bank, and that would procreate 1,000-year reign or more of justice and peace on Earth. And actually, I could argue that a single minute of justice and peace on Earth is our first minute to eternity. But anyway, so that was 8 years ago. I've been sort of on a quest to mind jihad to try to explain this all to you. And along the way, it became very, very clear very quickly that one of the obstacles that we had to face was the construct of religion, because you couldn't possibly get a whole world to go along with any kind of a plan, especially one that involved a new world order, without somehow getting rid of the conflict between people that centers around religion, a conflict that keeps even people of a nation in turmoil, a conflict that even crosses, for example, Islam, where Sunnis kill Shiites, and, people kill people, and that's a big problem, obviously, people killing people, and that is always a no-no in almost every religion you get into. And so what it came interestingly in terms of the disintermediation, it was not only a disintermediation of your economic constructs, sort of what lies beyond capitalism, as you know it, what lies sort of beyond democracy as you know it, and what lies beyond your notions of socialism and communism, what lies in the future of Earth. What would we create together as our best human enterprise, using the best available techniques of capitalism, along with the morality and the justice that all of us are the consumers, and that ultimately the enterprise of Earth should be tailored to meeting the needs of all the consumers of Earth. But let's get back to the discourse of today. We'll call it, the Sermon on the Water. I'm not on a mount. Actually, it was Sermon on the YouTube, and it's not really a sermon. I'm preaching to the choir, and I'm not really preaching. I have nothing to preach, except possibly peace and unity and love between all, and that's actually not even my idea. That's your ideas anyway. So, let's go back and talk about what I call the beautiful lie. And, as a 12-year-old boy raised as a Christian in Southern California, we were disenchanted by a Sunday school guy who said we must have faith in all the words and that all the words were absolute truth. And, we couldn't accept that all the words and all of the Bibles were absolute truth. And so we decided to check out other things. And I don't want to say that they're not true. In fact, it's not a question of true. It's a question of the hierarchy of truth. And you will never find true truth until you find and recognize that truth has a hierarchy. And it's through that hierarchy of truth that we can perceive the commonality between us. Because all I want to discuss today is what we share in common, not what we have apart. So, let's talk about, by the way, kudos to the Pope 2 days ago, and we'll get back to this date, March 13, 2013, Pope Francis was elected and actually represents the best instantiation of, well, the Pope that we might have for this future of Earth that we envisioned. And interestingly, if you go back about 8 years ago, after we started Imagineering, a conquest of the Earth by the people of the Earth that involved all the churches joining with all the rich and all the powerful on the nations of Earth to create one construct of one new enterprise, well, it was very interesting that within... Well, I could look it up again. I meant to look it up before, but within a few weeks of my first Imagineering, Pope John Paul died, and then we had Benedict, and then he resigned opening room for Francis. Anyway, and then yesterday, interestingly, was the day of Pi. Okay, Pi Day. And Pi is important because, see, it's the whole economic concept behind what we're going to talk about today, and we will get to the beautiful lie, is if we owned our world together, and the pie was this big, that if we owned our own pie, rather than fighting it out for pieces of the pie and destroying it along the way, we could capture the whole pie and do the best things to expand the pie and grow the pie for all to enjoy the benefits of growing prosperity, for a rising pie lifts all boats. Anyway, and so you get to the symbolic reference. Well, let's get to this, because it is interesting. Because when I went back and, well, imagineered how to reconstruct the future of Earth, I tried to reconstruct the past of Earth in terms of advancements and technologies and whatever. And, well, when you go back into in the beginning of all things, if you go back to what I was tracking back to the next big things. What was the first next big thing? Well, before anything, whether you call it the Big Bang, it was God. Zero. Big thing zero. Zero conquers any number, multiplied or divided. And, well, that was in the first number of the 3, and 3 was March, the Ides of March. But then, what's interesting, when you get to the 1, okay, now we get to the 1, the 13, on which they anointed Pope Francis Pope. Oh, and remember the little seagull on top of that little smoke? That was really weird. It was like, you couldn't have made this stuff up even when you were in Hollywood, which gets to a longer part of the story, which gets really weird. But, well, imagine that God was Steven Spielberg and running your show. That's not hard to imagine these days. Anyway, he could run a trained seagull on top of that little smokestack and really blow your minds as he did and created, well, he had his Twitter account in seconds. But anyway, the point is this. What was the point? We lose, the 13 is very interesting. Well, a lot of people in the Americas and what have you think 13 is an unlucky number. Well, Chinese think it's lucky. Anyway, that's interesting, isn't it? But anyway, the 1 was the perfect organization. The first thing sort of man invented, but is really the organization of God, which is monopoly. And the 3, by the way, represents sort of one of the first next big things, which is democracy, which means the people of us. So, and Pope Francis has declared himself through his sort of precedents antisacs as being a pope of the people, which is quite, well, revolutionary for a pope, because there hasn't been many popes of the people back since the really olden days. So anyway, to the point. Well, I know John Paul was certainly arguably a pope of the people, and I don't want to go through all the popes because I'm not anywhere near an expert at those or any other religion. Oh, and by the way, it was interesting the other day, because this isn't just about Catholicism, because there's like 1.2 billion Catholics, another billion other kinds of Christians, and 1.5 or 6 billion Muslims. The other day, and it was really weird because where I live, which is, well, I won't tell you all, but it's on the west, it's called Santa Barbara. I'm walking along, and this person, who I don't even know, says, "Hello, Mohammed. We've got some cleaning up to do. It's been a while." Well, I don't know if she was running around saying that to everybody, but if Muhammad was here today, he wouldn't have to travel to Syria or anywhere to realize we have some cleaning up to do everywhere. And, well, Jesus wouldn't have to. And you could go on and on. But anyway, let's get back to the beautiful lie. And the beautiful lie is that somehow we work for different gods. And, well, Gandhi knew that all of the religions, from Hinduism to Buddhism to Judaism to Christianity to Islam and all the other variants, all of them were all part of one God. And how can we lose sight of such a thing? Well, it was the beautiful lie, because God was not ready for us to have this revolutionary revelation until we were ready to change the world as we know it, from top to bottom, where the bottom becomes the top. And I don't mean where the rich lose and the poor win. No, where the poor and the middle win and the rich win. It's a win-win. And, well, it's really possible to have a win-win in expanding pie. And it's really possible when we all focus on a task at hand, justice and peace, and focus our minds on the task and focus on the hierarchy of truth, that we can create such an environment, that we can create such a reality ourselves. And so what was the beautiful lie? Well, it doesn't, well, obviously, I won't go into the whole paradigm, but a big part of the paradigm, if you look at it, all of the world's great religions have the common things about them. And even if you're an atheist, you must accept the reality that a society needs moral standards, and those are instantiated in our Bibles and our Bible's laws. In fact, the Ten Commandments are instantiated in Western law, in fact, most of the law of the world today. And so it gets down to some differences, small differences that we make into big differences. And they're, well, the distinctions that may matter in the past. And I don't mean in any of this to besmirch anybody's view of the world. I disclaim any notion to cancel out anybody's practices of any sort. In fact, we should embrace them all. But here is the beautiful lie, and it gets down to the math of the Trinity, and was the big schism that was like part of the thing that brought the Prophet Muhammad power in the world. And that is that, well, this notion of the Trinity, and, well, arguably created after Jesus, and the notion that the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit were all Jesus. And, well, is like, okay, on a mathematical basis, if it's 1 multiplied by itself, it's still 1. And divided by itself, it's 1. And so it's almost a distinction that doesn't matter. And it's actually a distinction that for Catholics they were able to build upon, etc. But in a certain respect, when the Prophet Muhammad came along, not in a certain respect, in a great respect, when the Prophet Muhammad came along and said God has no partners, hearkening back to the Old Testament, recognizing the gospel as religion of Jesus as part of Islam, the old Torah, the gospel of Jesus, and then his book, the Quran, were what he presented to adherents of Islam. Now, along the way, through all of the religions, men have added, and we call those prophets. But if we go back and to synthesize the core truths is there was and is only one Messiah. If we could all believe that Jesus was the Messiah, which, if you look in the Quran, it said Jesus was the Messiah. Jesus was the Messiah for the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet Muhammad was like his John the Baptist after the fact. to re-anoint him as the Messiah, but then also set up this paradox that we could break the code, because why couldn't we all be Christian brothers and Muslim brothers and all brothers as one world unity, as one, not a new religion, because in a world unity of us, I think it would be, well, an advancement of our mind to explore the cultures and religions of others, but also to maintain. Because what are we going to do in the future? A future so infinite, so full of possibilities, that we'll almost have nothing left to do but imagine more future and honor and recreate the past. And so, why would God lie? Why would God create a scenario and for thousands of years wait until now? Well, for now, we have the disintermediation. You see, technology is caught up with us and has allowed the possibility, and it may not be me, it's not, hopefully it won't be me, because I don't even want to be it, allowed the possibility for a prophet to come along and unite the people into a message of peace, for Gandhi to transcend political and even national boundaries, to transcend the boundaries of mind and language, because you can imagine anything that might be said might be translated into any language on earth. So you can imagine the power of disintermediation of the truth. And the point is this: if that is this huge bounty, a pot of gold at the end of our rainbow, the cancellation of the debt of the nations and the recreation of more wealth of all nations by the nations of people joined together and invest in each other to build an entire world, if that bounty exists by our creating a construct for peace and justice on earth, a construct that honors our religious heritage, that honors our posterity, that honors our God, well, that could be world changing. That could be revolutionary. It could certainly be a revelation. And so I leave you with this. There is a construct as we keep going down through this beautiful lie. And first it starts with, I am the way, the truth, and the light. That is Jesus. But if we all recognize that, well, and if we all recognize that we all work for the same God, then we might say, why did he confuse us like this? Well, the reason is, if God had come along and told Adam and Eve, here's what sin looks like, I'm going to show you a movie of sin, and don't do that kind of stuff. Well, first thing they'd be looking at the movie and say, what the heck is this? Well, this is way before Spielberg. Anyway, the point is this. The thousands of years of history might be looked at as a training plan of God, to show us in reality, our own reality, to show through our own posterity good and bad, to give us our own heroes and anti-heroes, and to show us even those of our heroes can be anti-heroes. Just look at your television today. We take our heroes and bring them down. But, well, maybe that justice of TV should be a private justice, a personal justice, rather than bring our stars down. Mete out private, personal justice. But those are systems that we could look at in the future. Because, see, when we own our future together, we own a sort of an ethic of reciprocity, where we all say, what do we do for our stars? And what do we do for ourselves? And what do we do for everybody, wherever they are in the spectrum of us? Because if we maximize everything for all, then, well, I don't know, then what? Because I think you know what to do. I think you have all the power and all the knowledge. Get around a round table, figure it out. Get all the world's religions together and have a council beyond Nicaea and say, can we create a construct to create religious harmony that would become a construct to create harmony in our streets? That is the apocalypse, the revelation that we need. Thank you and good night.